Oh, hello. How you doing over there? Didn't see you. Today we're actually in Central Park. You ever heard of it? We're going to be doing a special tour of Central Park where I'm going to talk to you about an actual town, a village that was here before the park was built. Town that was one of the first integrated communities in New York City history, one of the first predominantly black communities in New York City history, and it was completely erased from history to build Central Park. A little dark, but it's important to know this history. Before we start, I'm going to tell you guys, please subscribe, like the video, it always helps. All the analytics, it helps the stuff take off. And also, please check out my Patreon. That's a big help. Helps me fund these things, helps me improve them, and then we'll just keep on moving. Phil, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Everything's good?
Yeah.
We're getting some weird looks. It's kids' recess time in the park, so everyone's looking at us like, that guy's got to be famous. Little do they know, I'm not. And live with roommates. All right, anyways, we're going to get started. You ready to do this, Phil?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's walk.
All right.
So as you can tell, it's called Seneca Village, if you didn't see that gigantic sign that was right next to me. But yeah, Seneca Village was here since the 1820s, mid-1820s. If you want to come over here, Phil, and just get a little more of me so it's not like over the shoulder. Seamless, baby, per usual. So the whole reason we're taking this path right now is because the actual Central Park Conservancy has set up actual signs that make it really easy for you to follow this kind of path that we're following today. And you're probably thinking, well, Tom, why are we watching your video if I could just go follow this path? Well, if you can, why don't you just come here and do it? But this video is supposed to introduce you to it. So we're starting here, African Union Church. There's actually two churches. You have this one for the African Union Church, and you have this one here for the AME Zion Church. AME Zion Church was one of the first churches that bought property in this area. So in 1825 was when property by the Whiteheads was sold off, and it was bought by a couple black families and the AME Zion Church. AME Zion Church dates back all the way to the late 1700s, when a Methodist church in Lower Manhattan had a congregation that branched off to to do their own thing. It was a black congregation that wanted to have their own thing, so the AME Zion Church was started then. It's actually all over the Northeast now. There's actually an AME Zion Church in Sag Harbor, which I covered in my Sag Harbor video.
Sick plug.
Oh, nice work, Phil. You caught it. So you could see that they have all these little, billboards and things, talk about Seneca Village all over this little walk that we're about to make. They talk about, Seneca Village, the actual, name Seneca Village, where it came from. There's a couple theories. They don't exactly know where it came from. One is that it harkens back to the Native Americans, the Seneca tribe. Another is that it is supposed to harken back to the Seneca Falls Convention in the 1840s, when, there was a huge push for civil rights, one of the first big pushes for civil rights. Here you have a couple of little billboards we're passing by. All Angels Church is another one of the three churches in the neighborhood. There were three churches in this little village. It was a whole community. And you also have over here, this is what was called the Wilson House. There's a man named William Wilson who was actually a sexton over at the church that we passed earlier, the African Union Church. And he lived here. Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for asking. Very polite. So they're all playing tag, and I guess they see this camera and they see Phil. They see this man who's a hulking brute of a man, 7'6", 350 pounds of pure muscle, and they're like, who is that guy? All right, so we're crossing the street, and just so you guys know, this Seneca Village goes from about 82nd Street on the west side to about 89th Street. Now this is all important to keep in mind because those streets, those numbers didn't exist before 1811. So 1811, the commissioner's plan is basically passed, and that's the plan to basically map out and grid off all of Manhattan, pretty much. I've talked about this in countless videos. It's very, let's get over here. So you see all the little playground and stuff? And this is very important because this is what kind of gave New York its shape and its like makeup. But when that happened, one of the streets was 86th Street. And 86th Street was really one of the only ones that they actually mapped out for a very long time. Now I said this land was all bought by people early on in 1825. You see, this is a little post for Irish Americans because the Irish were the ones who also lived here with the African Americans who lived in this neighborhood. Anyways, 82nd to 89th Street here on the west side. When they bought it in 1825, the park wasn't here, obviously. And as the city developed, this was considered out in the boondocks, man. This was way, way far away. But it was very important because this was one of the first African American communities in New York, if not the first. And this was also, and that's important. So if you don't know, Weeksville is also another very important community, but that didn't come around until the mid-1830s, and that's out in what's today Crown Heights. It's not there anymore, but there's a great museum there. You should go check it out. Anywho, this one started in 1825. So it started out with a few families owning things, but by 1855, when Central Park was built, there was like 250 people living here. There was like over 50 buildings. And like I said, there was 3 churches, there was schools, there was gardens, there was cemeteries, and it was mixed. Irish Americans had started to populate it a couple decades after it was established because they were poor and they didn't really have many places that they could live. So they came here and lived amongst the African American community, and it was a successfully integrated community, which is kind of interesting, right? That's something that, you know, in that time didn't really exist as much. Now we're walking, and I'm getting winded. Whoo, baby, getting winded. Because we're walking up Summit Rock. Summit Rock is the highest point in Central Park, actually. This area is like 142 feet above sea level. It's the highest point in Central Park. And this was kind of the, you know, westernmost boundary, and to the east and to the north was the village. So if you look where I'm at now, you can see the point of Summit Rock over that way, and over that way was where the village was. This kind of served as like the, you know, the backdrop. You can see here the little you know, post. Someone left their keys here, I guess. Should we take them, Phil?
Yeah, man, have at it.
I guess it can't be worse than my apartment.
It's all yours.
All right, let's keep moving. Cool. All right, so we're keeping moving here. Now, I was saying that the Irish were the biggest European group kind of represented down here. And the reason was because they were fleeing the potato famine of the 1840s. Now, the potato was a really important food for the Irish. They started coming before that, but it really spiked and peaked with the potato famine. And when the potato crop went to crap, they all had to come here. All the people came here because they were starving to death, they were broke, it was a mess. You know, when your main food is completely wiped away, you're in trouble. I guess it would be like if, you know, if one day there was for me, there would be like an empanada famine. I'd have to find a new place to live. Empanadas are good. You like empanadas, Phil?
I love empanadas.
They're great. They're really easy food. Oh, look at this little squirrel. Is he okay? He looks sick. Oh no. Oh no. Dang, that's really sad. You see that?
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. Should I do something? It's a circle of life.
Yeah, let nature take care of itself.
You've got flies all over him. That can't be good.
Oh, you did?
I think so, yeah. The flies are just landing on him.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, he's in trouble.
He'll be gone soon.
Well, rest in peace, squirrel. I don't know what to tell you. All right, well, speaking of which, the potato famine sent a lot of Irish over. They inhabited this area as well. We talked about how now there are a few myths about Seneca Village. And one of the reasons why it's important too, we got to talk about this. It's important because it was a community. This was a neighbor. It wasn't just like shanties. And one of the things that they have you believe is that it was just a shanty town. And it wasn't until recently, in like 1992, that a book was published kind of really diving into the history. And as recently as 2011, they were doing excavations. In fact, the Wilson house where we were earlier, is where they did a big excavation, and they found certain things to indicate that people were living here, and they actually had stuff. It wasn't just people living in shanties like a lot of people talked about. Here's another one about the lanes, lots, and streets, how everything was kind of you know, mapped out, and the markers based on the actual grid were in place. Here you go, another one about housing. 52 dwellings, see? 52 dwellings between 82nd and 86th Street. Yeah, many contemporary accounts as a shanty town. It was actually, you know, there were people who lived here, and also more importantly, there were people who owned property here. This is another thing. This actual town or village had a connection to downtown. Now keep in mind, in 1825, when this was settled, the northernmost boundary of New York City around that time was like 23rd Street. There were like around 100,000 people in the whole city around that time. So this was way out of the city. By 1855, when the park took this over by eminent domain, the city had grown to like, you know, almost 600,000 people. That's a lot. That's a big change. But I bring this up because one of the big things that this neighborhood and town provided was it provided black people with the ability to own property. Now, starting in 1821, to vote in New York, you needed property. And guess what? They weren't selling property to any African Americans, except in places like this. So this was a place that actually some people owned property here. More prosperous African Americans owned property here when they lived in other parts, so they could vote. Interesting. Here you have Tanner Spring right here this is Tanner Spring. This is where they say was actually I guess, source of water for the neighborhood. Oh, look, they're doing a shoot there. They're doing a much more high caliber shoot than, it's not just me and Phil. We're like the bad news bears of these shoots. You can see all these people shooting on over. They got way fancier equipment. Whatever, we got heart, Phil. You hear that? Now we're walking under the Winterdale Arch. We're gonna cut back through. Now there's lots of arches in Central Park. And one of the reasons why is because in the Greensward Plan of 1858, which is the plan that won the contest to design Central Park, Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux wanted your enjoyment of the park to be uninterrupted, right? So there's arches all over the place. So you don't have to stop. You don't have to like stop. You just go right under what's going on over you. It's not an interrupted whole thing, you know? All right, there you are under the arch. You can hear me. It's a little dark probably, right?
Yeah.
But at least you can hear the echo. So now we're walking this way. So that's a Winterdale Arch. Now I was saying the park, so the park developed, so in 1853 the New York legislature set aside like 776 acres for the park to be built. And some of that land, it was land from 59th Street up to 106th. On some of that land, there was about 1,600 people total living on that land. But a lot of them lived in a village over in Seneca, right? This was like 250 people. And so as part of that, they had to boot these people. Now you're probably thinking, oh, okay, well when they build highways, when they build all kinds of things, that's part of it. When you build a park, you gotta get rid of some people, whatever, you gotta move them, and you do what's called eminent domain. You pay them for their property. Well, one of the problems is, by depicting this area as a shanty town, as a crappy neighborhood, as whatever, they can pay you less. And that's always what happens in these kind of cases. And in this case, they paid the people a lot less than the land was actually worth. So yes, it's what happens when you build a park or some big project, but at the same time, you should compensate people correctly. And one of the reasons they didn't compensate them correctly or justly was because it was an African-American community. Go figure. So you get rid of all these churches, the AME Zion, you get rid of the All Angels Church, which I imagine got its name because they couldn't settle on which angel to name it after. So they're just like, let's just name it All Angels, fine. And here I want to show you this. So if you look in this direction, you can see behind me, or in front of me, that's the Delacorte Theater. The Delacorte Theater is named after George Delacorte. This was put here in 1962. This is actually where they do Shakespeare in the Park. So every summer they do Shakespeare in the Park, and this actual path we're walking is where they have people waiting in line to buy free tickets. Well, they're free, so don't buy them, I guess. But this is where they have the tickets, and over there is where you do Shakespeare in the Park. Ah, kind of cool, huh? So this is George Delacorte. He was like a media publishing guy who donated this. Joseph Papp was the person who put it together. What he had been doing was, in 1954, he started touring. I guess, throughout the boroughs with Shakespeare shows, and they got popular. So by 1958, he was looking for money and looking for a place to set up permanently, and they built this in Central Park. Pretty cool. So you just kind of hang out here. You bring your date. Bring your date here, Phil.
Yeah.
And you can hang out here and wait for your chance to go get your free ticket. Also, too, an important thing: these rocks here used to belong to the reservoir, the receiving reservoir. Here's another thing about this area. So I said as the area developed, we can keep walking. As this area developed, as this area developed, New York City developed, it pushed northward, and one of the things they did was they put a receiving reservoir for the Croton Aqueduct, which was the first source of clean drinking water in New York history. And the receiving reservoir went right here, to the east of Seneca Village. And so those rocks that we just saw were the remnants of the western wall of that reservoir. That reservoir they replaced it, they put a new one to the north, which we'll see, and we'll end the tour there. But it's pretty cool. This is where the Delacorte Theater. That's where they do Shakespeare in the Park. Should go see if I can get on one of those shows. They get pretty famous people. They had Al Pacino doing Merchant of Venice, Anne Hathaway. They had Meryl Streep and Kevin Kline doing Romeo and Juliet at one time. I think it opened with James Earl Jones and George C. Scott in in a play.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? A lot of famous people have done it. I'm not very good at Shakespeare, I'll tell you that much. You know, I don't really, it's hard to memorize those things. Sonnets. So yeah, we're walking north. We're kind of doing a little loop. Like I said, this is all set up for you. You could just make this loop yourself. All the signs and stuff are here, so you could just come on your own. All right, and you'll see here to my right, you'll see all this stone here. This is all the granite. This is the bedrock of New York. Kind of is, so a glacier made its way over to the Atlantic Ocean, kind of scraping off all the sediment from the eastern seaboard, or this part of the eastern seaboard, like, you know, 40,000 years ago or whatever. And, you know, it exposed this bedrock. This is what's called Manhattan schist. Manhattan schist. Yeah, that's right. Schist. Schist. Look at the big pile of schist. We're walking all over schist. Every time I do one of these tours for like little kids, they go nuts with that fact. By the end of the tour, they're like, "Hey, Tom, you're such a schist head. Why don't you get a real job, you piece of schist?" Kids are cute. All right. Anyways, you see all this here. We're walking through. Now, one of the cool things about the whole design of Central Park, this is kind of a side, but the whole design of Central Park was made to look like it's out of nature, right? So you see all the trees and paths and all that stuff. It's all curving. There's no straight lines, all with the intent of making it feel like it came out of nature. But one of the coolest things I think about the design of the park is that it was all planned down to like the smallest detail, which means that you're walking through a living work of art. Huh? This is a living, breathing work of art. It's like it was imagined in the brain of human beings and then just put on the face of the earth. It's like when you go to a museum and you look at like one of these paintings and you're like, "Oh, that looks really nice. I wish I could just go there and lie down and smoke a doobie."
It's legal now.
It is legal, you're right. That's why I said that. Anyways, you can see all the people here hanging out. All this area here, like I said, used to be part of the village, the Seneca Village. And like I said before, a big important part of it was that it allowed people their own neighborhood, their own place to be safe, accrue wealth and property. So I was talking too about the reservoir that was built there in 1842. They eventually replaced it with what's today the Jack Onassis Reservoir. But the reservoir received water from the Croton Aqueduct, which came all the way through Westchester, bringing fresh water to New York. And then it would park it in the receiving reservoir. Then it would be sent to the distributing reservoir on the land that is today the New York Public Library. I used to hold millions of gallons of water. You could actually go up and just walk around the reservoir and stuff. You know, you take your dates out to reservoir, walk around the reservoir. That's what people did back then. I guess it's not that much different from today. I actually like to take walks myself. That's what I do. Cheap date, baby. Here you got more signs here. We're walking this path, like I said. And also, too, the excavation they did in 2011 was done by a group that was started to kind of find out more about Seneca Village. This had been pretty much erased from history. No one really talked about it or knew a whole lot about it. And they did an excavation when they, for example, when they did the Wilson House, they found pottery. They found they found all kinds of stuff, toothbrushes, all kinds of, and things that people actually used, and like people, like not luxury goods, but stuff that you would have if you were stable and had money. For example, Chinese pottery. They found pieces of Chinese pottery. I don't have Chinese pottery. You know, you should be doing all right if you're having Chinese pottery. So that's kind of where we started. You see that over there, Phil? See over there to the left. Oh, and over here too, you have the Great Lawn. The Great Lawn was what replaced the old receiving reservoir. That's where you can go, like, you know, concerts. I think like when they have big concerts, they're always there. So like when Paul Simon, which you don't know who Paul Simon is, huh, Phil?
I know who he is.
People were always shocked that you didn't know who Paul Simon was.
I know who he is.
From the
Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah, from Simon and Garfunkel. Well, Paul Simon, yeah, he did a big concert.
Know whatever song you were.
Oh, You Can Call Me Al.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Yeah, or in the Hell's Kitchen video, sick plug. Phil didn't know the song You Can Call Me Al. He did a lot of other ones like Me and Julio Down by the Schoolyard. You know that one?
I know that
Me
one.
and Julio Down by the Schoolyard. That one.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's where he did a concert in the Great Lawn, as did like Garth Brooks did a huge one there. They did all kind of, I think the Pope did a mass there in the 80s. But yeah, it's the Great Lawn over there. We're gonna go to a very nice part here, Phil. So it's kind of important, this whole area, it's important to know this history because I guess this is, one thing is people don't realize this about parks. Parks tend to increase land value. So people push for parks, not just because they're nice and you can go and, you know, smoke your doobies like the kids do. Sorry, I keep saying that. Anyways, you can go and like play and hang out, whatever. But people also push for them because it raises the property value. And Central Park was one of the motivations of Central Park, but also one of the motivations of other parks. Washington Square Park was pushed for because the guy owned a lot of land around the area with a lot of connections. He actually eventually took that money he made from selling the lots around it and created Snug Harbor in Staten Island with the money. Also, the most recent examples, the High Line. The High Line was pushed for by the Friends of the High Line, who are, a lot of people connected to the neighborhood, property owners. Little Island also was recently made by a man who was, a billionaire. He pushed for that and paid for that park. But it was an investment. It wasn't just like, complete philanthropy. It's an investment because he owns a lot of property in the neighborhood. Anyways, not to be too cynical, but the other thing to remember is that people get displaced for these kind of projects, and these kind of projects are also usually happen in neighborhoods and stuff where, people can get pushed around a little more easily. So, for example, a good example would be the Cross Bronx Expressway that Robert Moses built in the 1950s. Just tore down a section of the South Bronx and actually made the neighborhood pretty terrible because of it. You compare that with the Lomex, the Lower Manhattan Expressway, which was actually blocked by popular movement from the neighborhood organized by Jane Jacobs. Pretty nice though. Look at this, Phil. Isn't it nice? So this is a Jack Unassurance Reservoir. Wow. This was put here in the 1860s, and it holds. You can go over here and get over in front. This was put here actually in 1860s, kind of to replace the old receiving reservoir. But this holds over 1 billion gallons of water. How about that? It's a lot of water. Makes me want to pee just thinking about it. Oh boy. All right. Well, anyways, we're going to come up here and end this in a second. But you can see over there the Fifth Avenue, Upper East Side. Really beautiful view here. People are running. They're going to get mad at us here in a second, or even be standing here. They'll go around you. All right. Well, we made it kind of through the whole little Seneca Village. What's important to know is that this was a real community. There were people living here. It was like an actual community. It wasn't just a shanty town or people who didn't know each other. Oh boy. And
you weren't kidding when
yeah.
You said people were running behind us.
People are running. There's a bunch of kids. I'm just waiting for like a kid to just walk by with like a, flicking me off or something. But yeah, so you have all this, the Jack Unassurance Reservoir. That was Seneca Village. Really cool, I guess, piece of history. A lot of people don't realize when Central Park was built, it's one of the most famous parks in the world, but it did, it did displace some people, and there is something important to keep in mind, that there are people who existed here before, and their history, what they accomplished should live on, and also too how they were slighted when the park was being made. So, to be young again, to be young. I'll tell you what, if I was on recess, I wouldn't be running like that. That's for sure. I'd just be over. Well, actually, I'd probably be playing basketball or something like that. Yeah, play a little basketball. All right, well, I'm digressing. If you like the video on the thing. If you also liked it, please subscribe, and please check out my Patreon. That's a huge help. Helps me fund these things, improve them, all that stuff. But aside from that, I don't know, man. I can't really think of anything. Should we get a nice little view over here, Phil? See if we can get this view. This is pretty cool, huh? Also, that way the kids aren't running towards the camera. All right, well, yeah, I can't really think of a whole lot else. I missed anything, Phil? Did you think that was interesting?
I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah?
By the way, I've never been here before.
Yeah, okay. You never been to this reservoir?
Never been there.
Wow.
I didn't even know it existed.
You didn't know this reservoir existed. This is from the movie Devil's Advocate. You remember when he's running? And
Shit, yeah.
Yeah, it's from tons of movies. All right, well, I'm rambling now.
Yeah, anyway.
I'm rambling, but that's... All right, so we're done with this little walk, Seneca Village. If you want to know more about it, I'll put some links in the description. Also, you can come. The signs are all put up here, but it's very important to know that this exists, so I thought I'd do a quick video. That being said, I'm done, baby. This tour's done. I'll see you later. Sick.